Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Cast. We couldn't fire out any podcasts earlier in the week because of just some real life scheduling issues and recording niggle. So we are here with an almighty Niche Cast, and we're back in the flow, back in the grind, back in the groove with Aotearoa Sport Wildcard. First and foremost, swing a leg, roll the arm over, but a core exercise has got to turn the core on. Let's go global. Let's go Football World Cup. And you're the football extraordinaire of the niche cache and the niche cast. So I'm curious, is there one player, is there one team that you are going to make appointment viewing? Like, this team is playing, I need to watch this team play footy. This player is playing, I need to see this player in action for his team at the at the highest level, biggest stage, World Cup footy. Who is that team? Who is that player?
Well, I don't know about players because, I mean, it probably would have been someone like Erling Haaland, but Norway didn't make the World Cup. So he's not there. In terms of, I mean, there's lots of players, of course. I could list through a bunch of dudes, but I think the team situation is slightly more interesting on a couple counts. Like, I can think of three teams that spring to mind straight off the top of the head. One is Brazil, because Brazil is always good at World Cups, but also haven't won one for 20 years. And that's a factor when you're a country like Brazil. And when you look at their squad, one good defensive midfielder, one good centre back, about 15 world-class attackers. So I don't know if they're going to be playing like a 1-1-8 formation or something like that. Maybe even 1-1-9 and just have a rush goalie and see how it goes. Try win games 10-9. I don't know if that's going to happen, but they're absolutely stacked for attackers. They do have a couple good goalies, to be fair, as well. I would say as well, Netherlands are really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it's Louis van Gaal is basically said he's not going to coach, like this is his retirement gig. He's already come through cancer during the thing of qualifying for the World Cup. And he's always been a bit unhinged. He seems even more unhinged, like not unhinged, just like he does not care about anything else anymore. And also I think the Dutch have a sneakily really good team as well. And then the other one is Costa Rica, just because they beat us to get there. Part of me wants to see them get thrashed. It's just out of spite, out of negative emotions. Part of me also wants to see them do fairly well, because if they get thrashed, that means that us not beating them, the All Whites look even worse, right? So if they go and do okay and commendably lose to a couple of good teams, then that makes the All Whites look better. And you could go either way on those two things, but definitely am going to be having a peek at how Costa Rica go. Partly as well, because I spent a lot of time scouting them ahead of the All Whites game. So I actually kind of know a lot of their players as well. So we'll see how they go. It's the last swing for those Costa Rican dudes too, because most of their dudes are relatively old, like not going to be around for another World Cup, have been around for a couple World Cups in the past. So it's kind of like the last hurrah for a golden generation of Costa Rican footballers.
What about the bro Ronaldo, Manchester United legend, fan favorite, club favorite, stalwart, fantastic leader of Manchester United? No dramas, no diva mentality, just a pure footballer. Best Manchester United player ever. He's going to be playing for Portugal. You're tapped in, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be counting, keeping a very close eye on how many passes Bruno Fernandes completes to Ronaldo during the World Cup, because I think it might be a little less this week than it would have been if the World Cup started a couple of weeks earlier.
I did see that video of their handshake greeting, and I was like, yeah. I've got no idea what's happening here, but looks like they're. It looked so frosty. Bad. Yeah, it looked so bad that you just thought it was a joke. And then I obviously dig a little bit deeper and you realize it's not a joke, and that's how two international teammates greet each other. And this is how we greet each other on the Niche Cast. We just a little bit of a warm-up kōrero, and then we flow into our Aotearoa Sporting podcast. Big up to the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our niche cache, our niche cache. That is the best way to support us directly, straight up the guts. If you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the website yarns, if you enjoy the email dispatch, if you enjoy the podcast, whatever you want, however you want it. If you enjoy it, You can support us directly via Patreon, patreon.com/our niche cache. As I mentioned, we weren't able to record earlier in the week, so there was no Patreon podcast this week, but we'll definitely swing back around next Tuesday with another Patreon podcast. And we do encourage all Patreon members to hit us up with their own thoughts, their own questions, their own ideas to spark up our conversation on that Patreon podcast. Tomorrow's a Friday, which means the email dispatch will be sent out. And that includes all the links to the Niche Cache content, the website, the podcast, as well as extra yarns, extra sporting information. And I've done 10 intriguing Wahine cricketers ahead of the Halliburton Johnston Shield campaign, the summer wildcard. And that is live on the website, theniche-cache.com, as well as a yarn about Siwa Wong, Auckland Rugby League Junior. Kind of ridiculous, this one. He played SG Ball, Jersey Flag, New South Wales Cup, international footy, and he played an NRL trial all in the same year. So he didn't actually play proper NRL, but he did play an NRL trial, so he played everything except for NRL in 1 year, which was absolutely ridiculous. There's a yarn breaking him down. Wildcard has his usual National League debriefs. What else you got coming up for the website, the niche-cache.com Wildcard?
Well, written a big season preview for the Wellington Phoenix Wahine squad, which is sort of half of it is just like breaking down the situation coming into year two. Half of it is just like little mini player profiles of the entire squad, which is stacked with depth. Like the funny thing is, I think last year you could see pretty clearly what their first 11 was, and it didn't really change. It was part of that was like it's development year, not too worried. Everyone just goes out there, win or lose, like soak up the experience, learn, and move on to next week. This week, there's like 22 players who all of them pretty much could be staking a claim for at least a match day squad, if not a starting 11. So I think it's pretty hard to pick what a starting team would look like. A couple positions in particular are really like, I think left back is going to be a big duel. I think striker probably, or let's say left wing / striker, that area depends. Definitely central midfield as well, and also the goalkeeper, because Lily Elfeld's injured for the first couple of weeks, and they've got 2 backups this time. They didn't have it last year when Lily Elfeld missed a game. Charlotte Lancaster had to take the gloves and sit on the bench as a makeshift goalie. So I'm not gonna predict like making finals or anything like that, but I am gonna say I'm very excited for how that team's going to go, and I think they're definitely going to be a fair bit better this year than they were last year.
All of that is live on the niche-cache.com. But coming back to the 10 intriguing Wahine cricketers, one player I didn't break down was Lee Kasparik, who was one of the best bowlers in both competitions last summer, Halliburton Johnston Shield and Super Smash. So I'm going to write about her for the email dispatch tomorrow. And you'll get lots of Lee Kasparik information, one of the most interesting, not intriguing, because she didn't make the top 10 intriguing Wahine cricketers, but definitely it was a theme from House of the Dragon, where it's like the beast beneath the boards. And it's about the dragon beneath the boards that rises up. Obviously quite a metaphor there as well. And I feel like Lee Kasparik's a bit of a beast beneath the boards. She is an absolute monster of domestic cricket, but of course she didn't make the White Ferns this year, and a bit of drama there. As well, tomorrow, email dispatch, I'll probably serve up a whole lot of Plunket Shield notes as well when round 4 finishes. So those are the type of things you can expect in the email dispatch, just funky Aotearoa sporting bits of information for you to absorb. And maybe even just share with your mates. That's what we're here for. Just provide the information for you to do whatever you want with, because it's your life and you're your own person. Mindfulness wildcard. Speaking of the email dispatch, I did actually lay out a mindful process with some of the Aotearoa sporting action, where it's, I think I had pain leads to awareness. Awareness leads to mindfulness, and then mindfulness leads to gratitude. So that process, you know, Kiwis lost to Australia, Blackcaps lost their semi-final, whatever other thing, Aotearoa sporting thing, Israel Adesanya lost his title fight, like those things hurt for Kiwi sports fans, and those things kind of suck. But if you work through that process, pain, awareness, mindfulness, gratitude, you finish with gratitude, And anytime I thought about those things, I came back around to Aotearoa is the best sporting nation in the world because we're in those positions. So there's a bit of my mindfulness. What do you got?
I got is a excerpt from the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu. So somewhere in chapter 16, one of the little stanzas in there, if you don't trust people, they will become untrustworthy. It's funny how that works, isn't it? Where you decide not to trust someone, and then suddenly you start seeing all those little confirmation biases about why they're untrustworthy and why you were right not to trust them. But if you went into that sort of relationship with an open mind and a trusting sort of heart, then I dare say you wouldn't be spotting those things, and you'd probably be a fair bit happier and less suspicious.
Couldn't agree more. You got to give a bit of respect to be respected.
Absolutely.
And for someone else to get your respect, you got to trust someone to trust them.
Isn't it just so much easier as well? Like, it's just so much less of a weight on your shoulders if you're not walking down the street and looking at, like, is this kid going to key my car, or is this fella going to like steal my wallet, or like, just don't be suspicious of people who have given you no reason to be suspicious of them, and you'll find you're so much more at ease. Like, it just seems like that's a lesson in an age where everyone's talking about bloody ram raids and whatnot. Like, it's probably a good lesson to keep in mind, is just, until something happens, you've got no reason to freak out about it.
I do believe there are bigger issues than the ram raids, but
I tend to agree, yes.
Ram raids are a bit of an issue in Aotearoa, along with all sorts of other crime and various issues around the world wildcard, but we're here to keep to express love and gratitude for our existence here, and obviously with regards to Aotearoa sport as well, no fear, just love. That's what we're here for. And when you're operating out of love, it makes it a lot easier to then give out a seed of trust.
Yeah, definitely. Trust in someone hand else. In hand.
If you're operating out of fear, you're looking at everyone like with suspicious eyes, and that person's going to do this to me, this person's going to do that to me. So how about you switch from fear to love? Haere mai, let's go wildcard. The Black Ferns won their World Cup.
Which sport was that again?
That was a bit of rugby union wildcard, and we tend not to talk about rugby union because everyone else does. And credit to the Black Ferns, shout out to them. But you can also love women's sport outside of rugby union. Like, we want to express to everyone, it's okay. You can enjoy women's sport outside of rugby union, and you can also enjoy men's sport outside of rugby union in Aotearoa. So the Black Ferns won their World Cup, and two of our leading female sports teams have been in action recently. Football Ferns have been playing games in Christchurch, which was fantastic scenes down in Christchurch. And we've also got the Kiwi Ferns. They are in their own World Cup final against Australia. And let's start with the Kiwi Ferns here, wildcard. They had a narrow loss to Australia in their last group stage game. Then they went into a semi-final against England. They defeated England. After that last group stage game against Australia, there was a lot of like Australia just edge out the Kiwi Ferns, fantastic game. General hype around the game, and Australia holding on. What I believe was overlooked, that the Kiwi Ferns almost defeated Australia without a full-strength team. Like, two senior figures almost, Madison Bartlett and Charlotte Scanlon, weren't playing for the Kiwi Ferns against Australia. Meanwhile, you had Crystal Stowers, Abigail Roach made her debut in the halves, really important position in the halves, and she was on debut, as well as Mele Hofunga. Stowers and Hofunga weren't making their debut, but they were selected for the Kiwi Ferns from local footy in Auckland. Shout out Mele Hofunga, she has played Super Rugby as well. Whereas Australia, they've got a team full of NRLW players. So now we're thinking about this final against Australia, and the Kiwi Ferns almost defeated Australia with a weaker squad, like not their full strength squad, and also with players just from Auckland footy, which was then parlayed into a semi-final performance against England that was dominant, and Melehefunga was one of the best players on the field. She is spectacular, as well as all the best Kiwi Ferns. Georgia Hale, best lock in the world. Amber Paris Hall, she is the best edge forward in the world. Racing McGregor, the best halfback in the world. I'd say Crystal Rota is the best hooker in the world. Arpie Nichols was a non-factor in NRLW. Like, she went to the Titans and to play fullback. She started that season at fullback. She wasn't really doing a whole lot at fullback in a losing Titans team, so she moved to center. Right now, she is fantastic at fullback. Like, she is one of the best Kiwi Ferns so far in this World Cup. And that's been a bit strange, but her speed and power from fullback has been notable and eye-catching, along with the rest of the world-class Kiwi Ferns. And then you've got players like Melehefunga, who almost had a hand in every single Kiwi Ferns try against England. And again, she hasn't played NRLW. And there was one moment where she was named at centre. She made her debut as a winger. Then she was named at centre against England. And there was a moment where they put her back at winger to do like a kick return. So Melehefunga catches the kick, and Arpie Nichols was getting 50 meters every kick return because she was just steaming up the guts. Well, Melehefunga's doing the same thing, and she's a whole lot more powerful, and so much good stuff was happening from Melehefunga, from Arpie Nichols, let alone the rest of the forward pack. Maya Hill-Mawana's awesome. Brianna Clark, who's basically an Australian, she is also awesome for the Kiwi Ferns. So ahead of their final against Australia, folks need to know that the Kiwi Ferns almost defeated Australia with a weaker squad and players who weren't in NRLW, where the Australian team is all from NRLW. And I'm very excited for this final, because if the Kiwi Ferns win, it kind of flips the table on Aotearoa and Australia Women's Rugby League, because Australia have the whole competition. Like, all the women's rugby league infrastructure at the professional level is in Australia. That is their benefit. That is their strength. And then there's this Kiwi Ferns team who have the best players in the world and a bunch of grassroots players. Like, again, I keep kind of glossing over this. Abigail Roach made her debut for the Kiwi Ferns in the halves against Australia, and the Kiwi Ferns almost won that game. And that was the Kiwi Ferns' third halves combination of the group stages. Second game in a row for Abigail Roach. They defeat England, and she looks all good. So I'm very excited about this Kiwi Ferns team ahead of their World Cup final against Australia.
Yeah, I think we've seen that sort of pattern a few times recently, where like, I think it was on display a bit for the Kiwis blokes as well at times, where it was like, well, actually, you know what? A better example was potentially the Samoan men's rugby league team there, where it's like they got thrashed in the first game. It's like it steadily got better and better until they upset the team that thrashed in the first game, upset them later on in the tournament in a knockout game. Like, sometimes it just takes a few games to get into the swing of things. And if you're coming from grassroots footy, like playing at a lower level to playing at a considerably higher level like that, a lot of these players probably have the talent to be playing NRLW. Like, I think anyone who's playing for the Kiwis, the Kiwi Ferns right now, could be playing NRLW. For probably a fair few more on top of that. It's just there's limited teams in that competition, limited opportunities and whatnot. So not everyone can fit in. But it just, even if you're good enough to do that and to play there, you have a good chance of being able to play international footy as well. Like, if you might be good enough, but if you just haven't got the reps in recently, it might take a couple games to get going. And then as the tournament goes along, you get better and better. Like, reasons like that I think, and we'll talk about the football ferns soon. I think there's probably a good example there as well of some of their recent games where it's like a lot of A-League players, they're in preseason. Like it's not great for the football ferns to be picking players out of preseason who aren't playing at a comparable level to or haven't been playing at a comparable level to this recently. Great for those A-League teams. So I think it's pretty fantastic for the Phoenix to have some players go play against like South Korea, very good, like top 20 nation in the world, play against a team like that a week before you play against Melbourne City. Suddenly Melbourne City don't seem quite so terrifying because you actually played against a few better players. Like you played a few South Korean team, a couple WSL players, so it's, things like that. So it can just, regardless of talent and ability and whatever, it can just take a few games to get into the swing of those kind of things. And that is another reason why Kiwi Ferns potentially like something to take a lot of confidence out going into a second matchup against Australia in the final, wouldn't it?
That's also a reason why Australia might win. Like they're also
that's true. It applies to them too to some extent, yeah.
But the way some of these players have looked comfortable at this level is really impressive. And like if you're dealing in a Kiwi Ferns edge where it's Amber Hall and Mele Hofunga working together, that's a bit ridiculous. And there's a lot, like the thing I also like about the Kiwi Ferns is there's a lot of variety in how they're operating. There's like, you can tell they're well coached because Amber Hall is going to steamroll whoever is in front of her. And then every third time she gets the footy, she's going to pass. And you can see little things like that where the Kiwi Ferns and their shape and their structure is, and their like their strategy, they understand who the weapons are. They understand that those weapons command a lot of attention. And like if you're dummying to Amber Hall and you're passing to Mele Hofunga, that's pretty awesome because Amber Hall commands a lot of defensive attention, but you're giving the ball to someone who is equally as threatening running the footy. And there's little things like that. And like the ease at which Abigail Roach came into the halves, also like she was well prepared for that opportunity. So I think there's the combination of just their mana and their talent, as well as some of their shape, their structure, their plans is really impressive. And yeah, I think another thing to remind folks and double down on is there are many players in this Kiwi Ferns team. Like obviously the team of the tournament type of stuff lays this out as well, but Crystal Rotter, Georgia Hale, Maya Hill Moana, Aneta Nuuasala, Amber Hall, Api Nichols. They're some of the best players in the world, and my Aotearoa bias makes me say they are the best in their positions in the world as well. So I'm loving this Kiwi Ferns team. I'm loving Kiwi Ferns footy. Did you have like a similar, you kind of alluded to this, but were there similar observations about the football Ferns and how they're building under Klimkova?
Not to the same extent. I certainly can't look at a football Ferns team and say like this player is the best in her position in the world. This player, like they're just not on that level. They're not going to be. It's too big of a sport around the world. But I mean, I don't know, because I went into the game with a specific focus being like, I want to see how they plan to score goals against a better team. And unfortunately, the thing I came away from that thinking was, well, unless it's Liv Chance, I don't think they're going to. Like, I don't really see anyone else in that team, at least. And there was a team that was missing Hannah Wilkinson. It was missing Jackie Hand. It was missing, a few of their. Rhea Percival, I think, is quite an important attacking player in her own way because of how he runs the press. Rebecca Stott was an attacking player, but she wasn't playing. Abby Erceg wasn't playing. Katie Bowen was in defense. I think she's someone who could be a little more useful going forward once you get, like, supposedly, if you can get Abby Erceg back for the World Cup, then she goes into that centre-back position alongside Claudia Bunge. And Katie Bowen can play further forward, maybe as a right midfielder, maybe as a central midfielder, who knows? But also, I think the crossing ability of CJ Bott and Ellie Riley at fullback also not there. So it was just, it's going to be, I'm going to try write about it after we record this, but it's going to be a little bit difficult to try find the angle because they were missing literally half of their, like at least 4 guaranteed starters were not playing this game. And they don't have the depth to cover that. And in light of that, I actually think that a draw in the second game, I mean, we want to see them winning games. It's what the aim is. We want to see them scoring more than 1 goal across 180 minutes. But I thought a draw in that second game was actually a really good result. That's the kind of team who almost always beats them. I know the focus was like, they're playing in Christchurch, first game back in Aotearoa for ages. It's home crowd and whatnot. I mean, I was watching it on TV. I'm nowhere near Christchurch, but like, from what I saw, it looked like a home crowd for South Korea. He had a big sign out the front.
Korean Society of Christchurch.
Something like that, yeah.
They were out in force.
Incredible atmosphere.
Yeah,
it reminded me of when the Philippines played the Tall Blacks in Auckland a few, like earlier on in the year. And it was like a Philippines home crowd because all the Filipinos in the city turned up to support. Don't know that it was nearly as good of, in light of that, I don't think it was as good of a crowd as I would have hoped for. I think they got about 5,000 in the first game, about 3,000 the second game, which second game was like a Tuesday night. So it's a bit harder to get to and all that. But didn't quite get the home field advantage is what I'm saying from that. The off-field stuff, absolutely, because a lot of community work, meeting fans, all this kind of stuff was fantastic. And I think that's a big boost for the team to be able to engage in that kind of stuff. And it's something they'll get to do a lot more of with the World Cup coming up and more home games to follow. But on the field, didn't see that. On the field, also didn't quite see nearly as much attacking variety as I was hoping to see. It was really just like hit the strikers in the channels, and that was about it because they couldn't keep possession high enough up of the field. So I just didn't really learn anything at all about their attack, but they're the kind of team in the state that they are where it's like sometimes there's not an immediately tangible bit of progress to be seen. It doesn't mean that things aren't being worked on behind the thing, just the repetitions, repeating things is reinforcing. So, and above all, I think it's not a learning because we already knew this about the Football Ferns, but they're a good defensive team. Like the way they held out South Korea under a lot of pressure in the second half of that second game, that tells a lot. I mean, there was the one, obviously, the penalty shouldn't have been given. Shouldn't have been given, in that it was a mistake by Vic Essen, who shouldn't have rushed out and clattered a defender, attacker is what I mean. Absolutely should have been given as a decision, but it should have been avoided as an instance of play. However, as she said, cleaned up her own mess, made an absolutely brilliant penalty save. Other than that, South Korea missed a few good chances, but you got to ride your luck a little bit. I think the pressure they were under, they defended that pretty well. And that's why they don't need to score a lot of goals. If they can score one, or if they can just get from scoring 0 to 1 every game to scoring 1 to 2 every game, they are going to win games with that level of scoring because they can hold out against good teams with their backs to the wall, defending well. Little things that they can be a lot better at in terms of not being under so much pressure for such sustained periods, but they can handle it if it comes to pass that's what they're up against. So, and this is not a full, like I said, not a full strength defensive unit either compared to short-handed in attack, short-handed in defense as well. And they're doing that kind of thing. So there's positives for sure. Don't think we saw progress in the areas we wanted to, but then also as soon, like I saw the lineup for the first game and it's like, well, that team's not going to score goals. Like there's a lot of players that I like there, and a lot of players with good potential, but it's like they're not going to have the combinations. They're not going to have the class against a team this good to be able to do that at this stage of their careers. So, it's a work in progress, but there was certainly some good stuff to be seen there. And it was a lovely occasion having home games,
They only lost the first game 0-1, right? 1-0.
Yeah, well, 1-0, and Liv Chance hit the post late in that game. It could have been 1-1 in both games,
But like the Football Ferns are in a very different position to, like, they don't play in Aotearoa. So
that's this game for 4.5 years, I think, in home.
And you need to establish those connections to the community. You need to find your Turanga Waiwai and all that stuff. So like you're saying, Korea's a higher ranked team. They're a better team than the Football Ferns. You lose one game by 1 goal. You draw the second game 1-1. You reconnect with your local fan base. That seems like, and you give some of your depth players game time. You're competing at a high level without a full strength team. That seems incredibly positive. And just to draw some common threads between Kiwi Ferns and Football Ferns, like professional opportunities for female footballers are kind of abundant outside of Aotearoa, whereas a lot of the rugby union stuff, it's kind of semi-professional in Aotearoa. So if you're a female footballer, your career prospects around the world, you're going to travel the world, you're going to have a professional contract, and obviously these opportunities are only increasing, especially you got Wellington Phoenix, Wahine and Aotearoa and so on. Kiwi Ferns, well, NRLW is only growing. And there was a move like Caitlin Vaha-Akolo has moved. She's signed with the Blues for next season in the female Super Rugby. But NRLW is already bigger than Super Rugby, the female Super Rugby. It's going to be bigger. Like NRL has some serious issues with, like when you think about like NBA's might be a 50-50 profit sharing revenue split type of situation between the owners and the players. NFL is way worse. UFC is way worse. I'm all for, I think the niche case stance on this is we just want the players to make as much money as they can. We don't really why would I support owners making more money?
You don't watch the sport to see the owner.
I don't want any NRL owner dude or female making more money. I want NRL players making more money. I want NRLW players making more money. So we always side with the players in that regard. But the NRL stuff isn't perfect. Like we barely know a salary cap for next season, let alone an NRLW salary cap. However, NRLW is only expanding. And NRLW expansion means more Kiwis playing NRLW. So, and to sum up this kind of discussion, there's a lot of buzz around like rugby union, female rugby union, and we don't want to take anything away from that. We also want to highlight some of these other sports where the opportunities to the female athletes are growing, if not already superior. Like you might, whether it's money, whether it's opportunity, whether it's travel, whatever it is, there might be already female rugby league players who have better opportunities in rugby league than any of the Black Ferns. And I think this balance is going to, well, not the balance, but I think this is going to continue. And what you're saying about the Football Ferns are only going to be playing more games in Aotearoa. They've got the Wellington Phoenix female team as well. Like the buzz and excitement of female footballers in Aotearoa is only increasing. The opportunities for female rugby league players in Aotearoa is only increasing because like any of the players who are playing for Kiwi Ferns from Auckland, you're playing in a World Cup. That is a sure way to get an NRLW contract. Like after this World Cup, Mele Hofunga is she's going to be able to do whatever she wants to do. Abigail Roach, she can do whatever she wants to do. Those opportunities are there. The structure is already there for those players. They just have to perform and step up to get those opportunities.
Is NRLW expanding next year? Because I know it sort of shrunk back a bit because of the pandemic, didn't it? But it's sort of building back up again now.
So people think like, oh, the Warriors lost their women's team, and that might change people's perception of NRLW, but they had to constrict it for the pandemic. And then they lost
all their other teams as well, except the NRL team. So
I think there's going to be 2 or 3 new teams next year.
Okay.
So, like NRLW, they had 2 seasons this year. The first season, the Knights had 8 to 9 players from Aotearoa. And they cut most of those players for the second season and won the championship, which is weird. But most of the teams have 2 to 3 at least players from Aotearoa, and that is only going to increase in the coming years with more opportunities and more resources available.
Yeah, that's because the reason I ask about expansion is because the same thing is happening with the A-League. Like the Wellington Phoenix were an expansion team. If the A-League wasn't in a position, and there's twofold here. It's not just that it's a good, strong league that feels like it's got a solid enough base that it can stretch out, and more teams mean more commercial revenue and things like this, and just a higher functioning league with more teams is going to be more successful. But there was also a threat at play there because sort of the last 3 or 4 years, you've seen almost all of the very top, like Australian international Matildas players going to play overseas, mostly in England because they're good enough to get those contracts. And, Rebecca Stott was part of that wave as well, catching on to that. So, but going overseas to play games where there is more money, a higher level, so better like competition, also longer seasons. I think there was a bit of a threat that the A-League was feeling, is that because it's not a long enough season and not enough games, players don't stick around. And if players don't stick around, like your star players are the ones that people turn up to watch. So I want to see Sam Kerr playing for Perth or whoever, sort of thing. Like you go just to watch her. She's obviously not playing there anymore because she's playing for Chelsea and scoring Champions League goals. But like I think they felt the need to expand the competition for that reason, as well as those other sort of standard reasons of just natural growth and whatnot. So the Phoenix were a recipient of that, and that's been absolutely massive, I think, for Kiwi football, for women's Kiwi football in this country, because the Ferns are not going to be, they are going to play more than once every 4.5 years, especially over the next 6 to 8 months with the World Cup coming up. They're going to be playing a lot more than ever at home. And we want to see good crowds, and we want to see support, and we want to see people getting behind them the way they got behind the Black Ferns. Like the games in Christchurch didn't suggest that that's there, but that's also like the first steps of a longer journey. And as you said, reconnecting with the public and being seen and being known and getting like recognition. I think having the Wellington Phoenix now about to start their season on the weekend, first ever home game, every second week they're going to be playing. It's an expanded competition as well this year, because not just the Phoenix last year, you've also got Central Coast coming in this year, and then next year I think it's Western United or MacArthur or one of them. Like there's further expansion coming as well. Like 3 years in a row they're going to be adding teams to the competition, getting it longer and longer, to a point where they want to build it out to where it's like an extra round and it's pretty much a full season, something akin to what the A-League men's is. So where players can just stay in the A-League. The best players will still go because they're the best players. But having the Phoenix there as that stepping stone for football Ferns, but also as that like holding the fort down for football in this country and being seen and recognized, I think is huge for the sport, and hopefully something that the football Ferns are going to be very much a part of. Like just as the snowball rolls down the hill and gets bigger and bigger, they will benefit, the Phoenix will benefit, everyone benefits, sort of thing.
I'm not sure that a lot of the Aotearoa sporting public is aware of the Wellington Phoenix women's wave that is coming. Because I think what we're saying is there's like fair play to the Black Ferns. They're inspiring a lot of like young ladies to play rugby. There's also really good athletes in other sports who are inspiring some of the world's best young female talent, which happens to be from Aotearoa, to play their sports. And if you're a young female footballer, you know who the stars are. If you're a young female cricketer, you know who the stars are. And that combined with this, like the Wellington Phoenix already has a supporter base. Their fan base is going to buy into the Wellington Phoenix female team, because they are Wellington Phoenix fans and they understand the importance of the female team to the club and the community, because a lot of like these communities are, the female side is just as important as the men's side, if not more important. So I think there's a wave coming here with the Wellington Phoenix woman, and I don't know if a lot of the post Black Ferns coverage is ready for what is going to happen with the Wellington Phoenix female team. Obviously winning will help, build the size of this wave up. And they are playing their first game this weekend, World Cup. Wellington Phoenix Wahine. They are playing on Sunday, home game against Melbourne City. And you've got Betsy Hassett behind you.
Run up the shaka.
Yeah, I'd like to mahi in the midfield for the Football Ferns, able to hold the ball, roll, receive the ball, distribute the ball. And I'm not necessarily...
Maybe the only person who ticked all those boxes in that
I don't
team,
know if it's...
other than Liv Chance.
I'm not sure if it's at the level of old Kryev for the Wellington Phoenix blokes, who gets the ball and he immediately looks wide. And it just makes me so happy because he's always passing into space. It sets up the attacking flow, and I just like his ability to receive the ball and instantly go wide. Is Betsy Hassett the best player for the Phoenix Wahine team?
Yes. In one word, yes. I mean, you got a team of emerging players for the most part, and players who are not established professionals necessarily. Like even the older ones, like Michaela Robertson is 25, 26. This is her first time as a pro. Someone like, Chloe Knott's had a brief stint in England. A few of them, like Knott, like Michaela Foster, have played USA college stuff. Most of them are young in their careers, even the ones who have been experienced a little bit more. Like someone like Emma Ralston has played in Germany. She's played a couple of seasons in Norway. Hasn't been like a star player or anything at any of those levels. Like she's been a solid professional squad member, but she still feels like someone who's trying to establish herself and have that breakout season kind of thing. Betsy Hassett has played for Ajax, Manchester City, Werder Bremen. It's a lot in her earlier on in her career. She bounced around a lot of different countries, played in a bunch of places. And then the last 5 years has been based in Iceland, where she's been like, and this is a low-key quite important thing. She joined a team called Stanen about 3 years ago at a time when they had been one of the best teams in Iceland, but were going through a rebuilding period. Really young team. Like she was playing alongside teenagers when she signed there as like the senior player, playing a lot in midfield, trying to sort of facilitate things on this rebuild, setting things up, a lot of young players, a lot of mentorship type things. Does this sound familiar? Because this is kind of exactly what she's got going into the Wellington Phoenix as well. That team, 3 years later, she's left, having played about 50 odd games for the team, ended up at the point where she was no longer getting a spot in midfield. Like she was playing out wide as a winger, or sometimes even I think as a wing back, but scoring a few goals, actually scored a couple beauty goals of this last year. She leaves them having finished, it was either second or third on the table, I can't remember which, qualifying for Champions League qualifiers next year. So she took them from a rebuilding team that had been up around that. 3 years later, she leaves and they're back up where they once were. She's got a similar job at the Wellington Phoenix as she's played 137 caps now for the Football Ferns. There won't be anyone else in that squad with more than 15 to 20. Oh, Paige Satchel would actually. Paige Satchel probably played about 30 odd games. But still is also someone who feels like, similar to Ralston, it feels like a player who has had a lot of opportunities and is still developing in her way. Like she's still figuring out a few things about how she's going to be the best player she can be. And the Phoenix is a really good option for her right now, I think, because unlike Sydney FC last year, playing for a good team, so training at a high level, but also when you're in a good team and you're alternating between starting and coming off the bench, it's sort of like, I've got to do what the team needs me to do, sort of thing. I got to change who I am as a player in order to fit in for the thing, because I don't have the luxury of just being picked every week to do the thing that I'm best at. Phoenix, she's going to be a locked on starter every game. So that's great for her development and also good for the Phoenix because she's a step up from what they had. So, but yeah, Betsy Hassett is far and away the most established, the most experienced, the oldest player in the squad, but certainly not someone who's like on the brink of retirement or anything. She's like 32, and the way she plays, easily play another 4 or 5 years if she wants. So, I mean, she is the key player, and how she plays determines a lot of the. I don't think that's necessarily true, though. I think it's more that she raises the bar. I mean, we've seen players like Liv Chance, Katie Bowens. Liv Chance had a great year with Brisbane. Katie Bowen's gone to play for Melbourne City this year. I think Betsy Hassett like Bessie Hazard is on par with those other Kiwi midfielders who've played in this league. And they were, and Chance played, she was one of the best midfielders in the competition. That suggests that Hazard can come back and be one of the best midfielders in the competition. The Phoenix have got one of the best midfielders in the competition. They're going to be, that already raises the floor for their team a significant amount from where they were last year.
So I'm tuning into the Wellington Phoenix Wahine on Sunday afternoon against Melbourne City. What is one thing for me to watch closely?
The thing I'm going to be paying the most attention to is the team selections, because there's like 5 or 6 players who could play left back. There's 2 goalkeepers who are in a hot duel to see who's going to be the starter with Oldfeld out. Right back is probably going to change. I think Marissa Vandermeer will take over from Zoe McMeekin, who played there a lot last year. Vandermeer played ahead of McMeekin at the Under-20 World Cup, and Nat Lawrence was assistant coach for that team, so that suggests that will continue. Grace Wisniewski is under an injury cloud, maybe okay to go, but probably not, I would suggest. Betsy Hassett should play, but Isabel Gomez is out injured, so there'll be another midfielder. Maybe Chloe Knott drops back to the midfielder, I'm not sure. Paige Satchel should start up front. She'll be on debut for the club. Emma Ralston, I expect, she missed the second Football Ferns game, but sounds like she might be able to play this one. If not, so I don't know, either Knott plays there again or someone else, but Grace Jarley's not there either, so there's another winger spot open. Alyssa Wynnum should be starting, but I think in terms of combinations on the field, the only combination, like if you think about the field in terms of it's those links that you have across the parks, like the 2 centre backs, the centre back and their fullback, the fullback and their winger, the centre midfielders, the strikers, the whatnot. All those combinations. The only one I think is going to be untouched from last season is centre back, which will be Mackenzie Barry and it'll be Kate Taylor, holding it down going into year 2. I think that's the only one. So a lot of interesting things there that could go up. It's hard to say what to look out for, and I don't know who's necessarily going to be playing. But I think that first team sheet will be very interesting, and I suppose something I'll be taking good notice of as well within that is because if you'd asked me, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or whatever it was, name 2 players from the domestic scene that the Wellington Phoenix should sign above all else, like they've given me the checkbook or whatever, or blank checks, whatever it takes, sign these players, they will agree to it, offer they can't refuse kind of things. Who are the 2 players they should go after? I would have said, well, sign the best player and the best prospect. And the best player was Michaela Foster. The best prospect is Millie Clegg. They signed both of them, so that was nice. They've either been reading my articles or I just have my opinions have been validated because the Phoenix has backed them up. Stay humble, of course. So I'm curious to see where those 2 go. I think Foster could start because I think it sounds like they're probably looking at her for that left back position. She could literally play anywhere. She could be that replacement midfielder with Gomez and potentially Wisniewski out. She could play in the front line. She could take Alyssa Wynnum's spot. She could play anywhere on the field, but she's got to play somewhere, I think, because she's a set-piece specialist. She can play with both feet. She's an excellent player and has been the dominant player in domestic football in 2022, playing for Northern Rovers. So there's that. And I'm also curious to see what they do with Millie Clegg, because Millie Clegg is the best number 9 prospect potentially that we've ever had. She's only just turned 17. They're not going to throw her into the wolves, but she's also good enough to be here. So at some point you got to be like, well, what's the, like, I suspect they'll ease her in, but I do think by some point during the season, she's going to be making every squad and playing a lot, because I just kind of think she's as good as anyone else who's competing for the position she wants to play in. So the best, as far as I see it, like the best Australian players her age are playing A-League. So the best New Zealand player her age should be playing A-League, like not just in the squad and gaining experience by going to trainings and whatnot. I mean, playing, like getting minutes off the bench or starting or however it goes. Very interested to see what the plan is with her, whether she's pushed her way into match day squads from week 1 or whether it takes a little while, but I'm pretty confident it will happen this season.
How would you grade the Wellington Phoenix men's first stanza of the A-League. Obviously, they're taking a little break now because of some other tournament. I don't know if you want to go like achieved merit excellence if they're still using that system, A plus, B plus, and so on, or maybe a 5-star system. Whichever system you want to use there, what grade are you going to give the Wellington Phoenix men? There was that they had a niggly loss last weekend. I was kind of in my mind, I was whipping up all these ideas, all these narratives. Wellington Phoenix men, they're awesome, they're fantastic. And I did highlight how shit their opponent was in previewing that game. So then I was like building on that in my mind. I was like, yeah, here we go, here we go. And then it kind of fell apart. So on the back of that loss, suddenly their lack of wins kind of is amplified and just gets a bit tricky. But what grade are you going to give the Wellington Phoenix blokes after their first stanza? First of all, which system? Which grading system?
We'll go with the ABCs. I think is a little easier to get a handle on. I think the other tournament that the A League is breaking for is the New Zealand National League. I think they're testing so everyone can watch the games over the last couple of weeks. So,
Haaland's going to be playing for Otago or whoever's down there.
Auckland City. If anyone signs him, it'll be Auckland City, and then they'll pay him as a coach. do some youth teams during the week. The thing is, what you said about that Western United, I don't want to overreact to that game, but I also can't underreact to that game. It's hard to find where that balance is in between those two things, because had they won, I think I'd be talking like a B plus or something like that, because I think that'd be roughly like fourth on the ladder, I think, or something like that. And a couple wins, couple draws, couple losses, I think would be where they're at. It might be 3 draws, but they'd be in a good place at that stage. Like they'd be within range of the teams ahead of them. They'd have got some points on the board. They'd have a lot of confidence. Then they blew that game, and now, as you say, the one win so far looks pretty. I mean, that's going to be one of those itchy feet kind of thing when you're sitting there watching the National League finals and thinking like it's this long until the Phoenix can make amends for their game. Like there's those dudes out there having lost that game are going to be thinking like, I just want to play again as soon as possible to fix it, to make up for those that sloppiness and a really bad second half, which came out of the blue a little bit for them because they've been playing so well to that point. And Western United was struggling, but they're a dangerous team. They were defending champs. Like they've got stacked players. The two experienced imports that they brought off the bench who scored the goals at the end that I think equalized and put them in front. So
who's the
danger was
guy?
there. Diamante,
yeah.
Yeah, he's class. It's when that free kick was awarded, it was like we're in trouble here. Sure enough,
it was like the opposite of the Clayton Lewis. Like,
yeah, it was.
Knew that was going to be scored, and then opposite, vice versa for the old mate Diamante.
Yeah, but the thing about that is, like, did the Phoenix lose that game because they are not that good of a team, or did they lose that game because of controllable things that they slipped up with? And then if that's the answer, like, yes, they themselves threw that away, then you have to ask, are they a team that's going to continue to throw games away like that? And I suspect probably not. It doesn't seem like the kind of team that they are, in which case you look at the table, one win from, is it 5 or 6 games, whatever they've played. I struggle to give them more than a C minus, but I also think that they could change that very quickly with a couple wins coming out. If they take the lessons from this kind of defeat and just be like, well, we need to be more ruthless. We need to defend set pieces better. We need to put away our own chances. Even if we're 2-0 up, we need to make sure we score the next one and go 3-0 up because we don't want to take that risk. Doesn't matter who we're playing. Like we need to be the team in control, dictating things and not leaving that door open for a comeback. Things like that. If they learn those lessons, it's not hard for them to go. And I still think they're a really, like, the fact is, if they'd held on to that win, that what was I saying, like B plus or something along those lines. It's a big difference between those two things. It's a big difference for 45 minutes of football to make, which is why it feels weird to try to think about the balance of the overreaction underreaction thing. But I don't know. I guess we just have to eventually see how they respond, because I think that's the bit that where we learn about this team more, is when they come back after a bunch of weeks of training and being fired up, because they could easily like take this as a lesson and then just win 3 games in a row coming out because they've learned everything they need to do. They're not taking chances anymore. There you go. Like I don't think we'll see them wilt or anything. So I'd C- at the moment just because of the lack of points on the table, but I think they can change that quickly with the right response when the league resumes.
C's to get degrees. So
C's do get degrees. That's right.
Also, just
C's make finals.
Well, it might do, because looking at the A-League ladder, what are there? There's 12 teams. Phoenix are one of 3 teams on 6 points, including the 10th place team Newcastle. Then you go up to 4th, and MacArthur are on 8 points. So between 4th and 10th, there's 2 points. So you can see how the ladder can be a bit of volatility on that ladder coming in when the second stanza of games swings back around.
Yeah, a strong December is of form, and they're going to be competing for a home final if that's like, and it's still early in the season, that even if that doesn't happen, there's plenty more matches to make amends afterwards. So it can change very quickly. It's one of those seasons. And I don't know that 1 or 2 teams, I think like Melbourne City look clearly as like better than anyone right now. And there's maybe 1 or 2 teams that might be saying, well, we can compete with them and we're better, like putting a distance between themselves and the rest. There's no one else though. It's not like there's a clear differential between finals teams and everyone else. There's a lot of teams many things can change between now and the end of the season.
Let's swing into a bit of cricket here, Wildcard. Just keeping on track with today's theme, I do want to highlight to folks, so the Halliburton Johnston Shield, New Zealand's one-day competition, that begins this weekend. These games are just Saturday and Sunday because obviously this level of women's cricket in Aotearoa is very... not even...
amateur.
What's below semi-pro? What's like...
well, amateur.
Quarter pro? I don't want to use the word amateur.
Is there degrees of semi? Well, I mean, you're getting match fees, I would imagine, at least, if not
quasi pro. Let's go with quasi pro.
Quasi pro, okay.
But Aotearoa's best players are competing in the Women's Big Bash League, and funnily enough, Aotearoa's best players are also some of the best players in the Women's Big Bash League. Yesterday, the Sixers defeated Brisbane Heat, which means Sydney Sixers and Susie Bates, they are first. 19 points, 9-2 record. Brisbane Heat, they are second on 16 points. I believe Amelia Kerr is the best player in Women's Big Bash League, and she has just been rejoined with her sister, reconnected with Jess Kerr at the Brisbane Heat. Bit of a situation here. Jess Kerr started the campaign as a replacement player for Pooja Vastraka, and Jess Kerr played like 3 or 4 games, was pretty solid. And then Vastraka came in, and Jess Kerr's stats were so far beyond, like so much better than Vastraka's stats. Let me pull them up here for a comparison. So Vastraka, 2 wickets, average of 77.5, RPO of 8.5. Jess Kerr has 6 wickets, average of 21, RPO of 5.72. So Vastraka's average versus Jess Kerr's average, 77.5 versus 21. Vastraka's RPO versus Jess Kerr's RPO, 8.15 and 5.72, sorry. So Jess Kerr's absence, she made way for Vastraka, and then Vastraka left, maybe because they wanted Jess Kerr back, maybe because she was like off to do something else, I don't know, but Jess Kerr is significantly better than Vastraka. Vastraka played 7 games with 19 overs, Jess Kerr's played 6 games with 22 overs, so similar sample size, but Jessica is just so much better. So that duo has been brought together again. So now you've got both Kerr sisters at the Brisbane Heat, who are the second best team in Women's Big Bash League. That's fantastic. And then you've got Perth, Hobart Hurricanes are third. They've got Hayley Jensen. Perth Scorchers are fourth. And they've got Maddie Green and Sophie Devine. Sophie Devine, this is basically her worst Women's Big Bash League. So I'm curious to see how that winds up, because Perth Scorchers are fourth and the top 4 teams qualify for Women's Big Bash League finals. They are on 13 points. Adelaide are fifth on 13 points. So kind of feel like Sophie Devine has been looming this whole tournament. She just hasn't actually cashed in. She's still doing a good job captaining the team, and she's a very useful bowler, crafty. Her bowling is one of her probably a most underrated thing in women's cricket is Sophie Devine's bowling. So she's still influencing games. She just hasn't scored as many runs, but that is to say the top 4 teams in Women's Big Bash League have at least one Kiwi, which is par for the course of Aotearoa sport.
Are there Kiwis at other teams, or is it like the teams who signed Kiwis are doing well and the teams who didn't are not doing well?
Leah Tahuhu is playing for Sydney Thunder, and they are last 1 and 8. And this hasn't been a great campaign for Leah Tahuhu. She has 4 wickets and an average of 38.5 and an RPO of 7. So not the best. And Thunder are losing. So Kiwis in the top 4 teams and 1 Kiwi in the worst team. So evens itself
the exception
out.
To the rule.
Plunket Shield cricket is ongoing. Wildcard, final day of the final game of the first stanza of Plunket Shield cricket. So there will obviously be a lot of Plunket Shield content coming up over the weekend. And we've got a Blackcaps squad. So one idea I am pondering is the abundance of Plunket Shield spin bowling, because it's gone beyond some of the teams selecting 2 spinners. Northern, let me pull out some of these bowling attacks. Like Henry Cooper's taken wickets for Northern. Robbie O'Donnell's taken wickets for Auckland. It's all over the place. And I'd just like to say that spin bowling is a definitive factor in Plunket Shield cricket in November. For anyone who's wondering, and allow this to frame your Blackcaps spin ideas, because spin is huge in Aotearoa right now. Let's look at Northern Districts. They have Tim Pringle, Dutch cricketer. He's made his debut, tall left armer. Henry Cooper is bowling off spin. Freddie Walker's bowling left arm spin. Jerry Jeet Raval is bowling leg spin. So Northern Districts have deployed 4 spinners in their game against Otago. Otago have been, I think you've got a bit of Michael Rapon. Dean Foxcroft is also bowling spin. So those 2 teams have at least 2 spinners bowling overs in that game. If we go to Auckland versus Canterbury, Robbie O'Donnell took 5 wickets for Auckland as a spinner. I think he's bowling off spin.
He did what now?
Will Somerville.
Did he score 100 as well?
He did. So,
Okay.
So I think Auckland, assuming Will O'Donnell's bowling spin, which I think he does, Auckland may be using 4 spinners as well. Will Somerville, Robbie O'Donnell, George Worker, and Will O'Donnell. And who are they playing? They are playing Canterbury. Canterbury, 2 spinners, Theo Van Workum and Cole McConchie. So that is 4 teams with at least 2 spinners getting overs. And I think it's 2 teams who have at least 4 spinners, which is fantastic for the spin bowling fraternity. Central Districts, they've got Ajaz Patel holding it down. And you've got a couple of overs for Brad Schmullian. So they've played 2 spinners. Wellington, you've got Peter Younghusband and Rachin Ravindra, 2 spinners. So every team in the Plunket Shield right now is using 2 spinners, and a couple of teams, funnily enough, wildcard teams who are from the northern regions of Aotearoa, not necessarily playing in the northern regions right now, but they're from the northern regions. They have 4 spinners. So you do have seamers, Matt Henry, Jacob Duffy, Logan Van Beek bounced back into Aotearoa cricket with a bunch of wickets as well. Seamers are taking wickets for sure, but there's definitely a place for spin in Plunket Shield teams right now. So at some point this summer, this narrative is going to pop up about the Blackcaps and their spin bowling. Are they going to select Ajaz Patel? Is it going to be an all-seam attack and all this other stuff? Every team in Plunket Shield is using spinners. Some teams are using 4 spinners. It's a bit ridiculous, but I do find it interesting.
Yeah, especially because I wasn't the narrative I was expecting to hear when I was like, earlier on in this podcast, it was raining hard enough outside my window that it was coming through a little bit on the bottom of the audio feed. Like, it's been very wet where I am. I'd imagine it's been very wet in Auckland. You don't necessarily like that's not spin bowling weather, but I guess it's not been the case around the country. I'll tell you 2 fellas who'll be extremely stoked by a lot of that. A Mr. G Larson and a Mr. G Stead as well, because what I hear from a lot of those spinners you're mentioning, it's like, who was it you said with like Auckland using 4 spinners, only 1 specialist though. A lot of batters who can bowl spin. The Blackcap selectors like a bit of that, a bit of the batters who can chip in with some offies or whatnot. Like, there's a few good examples of that. I think Robbie O'Donnell might get maybe he'll be going to Pakistan at this rate, scoring 100 and taking 5 for in the same game. So, I mean, all Martin Guptill's got to do is come back to Auckland. Ford Trophy, I assume, is probably some games coming up or whatever. If it's not straight into Super Smash, I don't know how the schedule works, but start rolling his arm over with a few of his little gentle off spinners. He's taken some international wickets before. He could specialize himself and have that late career comeback if he wants back in there.
Martin Guptill ahead of the curve with batters who bowl spin. He
really was.
He used to give it a rip, didn't he? Like, if memory serves me correctly. So, Otago versus Northern. That's in Dunedin. So Northern are playing 4 spinners in Dunedin. Auckland versus Canterbury. Auckland are using at least 3 spinners in Christchurch. Central versus Wellington. Both teams have deployed 2 spinners in Palmerston North. So it's like, it's not exactly Cobham Oval or Bay Oval or Eden Park. The spin is being a factor in Dunedin and Christchurch. You mentioned a bit of Martin Guptill there. You did mention a bit of Blackcaps. So the Blackcaps have named a squad for this very exciting, riveting T20 International Series against India. There is ODI Super League stuff coming up as well after that T20 series, which is when I think I'll tap into some Blackcaps cricket, just lay out that.
You don't want to watch the 3rd and 4th playoff series for the 2 beaten semi-finalists from the last World Cup. They should they have got a trophy on the line because Kane Williamson caught it when the thing flew over in the wind in that video. But
I'll take that.
Yeah, good answer from him. But they might as well just scratch out whatever's written on the front, like stick a post-it note on top of it or something. 3rd and 4th playoff for the 2022 ICC T20 World Cup. 2 beaten semi-finalists in a 3-game series. I saw someone actually tweeting about this idea of like, what if they did a series for the semi-finals and 3-game series for the semi-finals and T20s, 3-game series for the final. I don't think it's necessary, but it's an interesting idea at least. And get some version of that against India. But I do agree the ODI series is clearly the more important one.
We do not need more cricket. Like, there's enough meaningless cricket already. And funnily enough, the nation who plays the most meaningless cricket might not be meaningless if they win, but England just plays so much more cricket than a lot of other teams. So no surprises, they might win something. What's your any questions? Anything you want to throw at me about the Blackcaps squad that I can just fire off the top of the dome?
Did you have any expectation that Trent Bolt would be a part of this squad? Because it seems like the Guptill thing, he has been squeezed out a little bit. Like they want to pass the torch to Finn Allen, and Finn Allen has done enough to deserve that. I'd argue at this point as well. So it's unfortunate for Guptill, but you can only pick two openers, and Devon Conway's one of the best batters in the world, and Finn Allen is clearly the next dude up. So you can understand why Guptill isn't there. Did you have any inclination whatsoever that Trent Bolt, who doesn't have a contract, would be a part of the squad?
If the series was played in the summer of 2018/19, Trent Bolt's not playing.
Yep.
he hasn't played these series before. These are the series when Trent Bolt is running up Mount Maunganui.
Walking the dog on the beach.
Like, Trent Bolt has literally, I think he's played half as many games as Tim Southey or Ish Sodhi or these other dudes. And this precise series is a series Trent Bolt never plays. So who gives a shit? Anything else?
Well, I just thought it was funny that where you had the thing from Gary Stead in the quote. So I don't know how much to take it seriously when they say, like, well, we said at the time that we would have to prioritize players with contracts, and that's what we've done here. Because if Trent Bolt says he wants to play, then you pick Trent Bolt. That'd be stupid. But we knew he wouldn't play. Like, this is, as you say, he wasn't playing these games anyway with a contract, so he wasn't going to play without one. It seems...
Obviously,
I guess you got to do some lip service to protect the integrity of your contracting system, though, isn't it? I think that's what that is, isn't it?
Yours truly doesn't give a shit what's said in these announcements anymore.
Yeah, no, it's very easy to miss those points as well, especially when they're presented as press releases from the Blackcaps, where it's like, well, obviously you're trying to put certain ideas forward. You're choosing the narrative effectively. So I don't know what else there is to say about it. They've done the ODI squad too.
Guptill's not there. Like, let's talk about Guptill.
Okay. Let's do some Guptill.
He's a really good cricketer. He's not on the Blackcaps. I think Guptill, Martin Guptill was a key reason why Auckland were really good last summer. Because when Martin Guptill goes back to domestic cricket, Martin Guptill is way too good for domestic cricket, and he scores runs. And anytime a player of that caliber, Tom Latham, Matt Henry, Glenn Phillips, Lockie Ferguson, when they get back into domestic cricket, they dominate. So Martin Guptill's going back to domestic cricket. He's going to dominate. And like, a lot of this stuff is like really doom or gloom. And you can see how negativity and fear is at the forefront of a lot of, especially Aotearoa sports media coverage. An opportunity will come Martin Guptill's way. Someone will get injured. Someone won't be able to score runs. Like, who's to say Finn Allen is going to score ODI runs? He hasn't scored 50 over runs at a reasonable strike rate. Finn Allen scores 50 over runs, 4 trophy runs, with a strike rate over 120, 130, 140. He does, when he scores 4 trophy runs, he does the same thing as he does in 20 over cricket. And as good as a slugger as Finn Allen is, because he is the best slugger in Aotearoa, it's no certainty that Finn Allen is going to score ODI runs, especially not against India. And whether it's injury, whether it's form, Martin Guptill is going to have another opportunity. It's just kind of, they're just like, right now they're just making a decision. We'll roll with this, see what happens. And it can get a bit doomy gloomy for someone like Martin Guptill, like, oh, is he going to get back on the team? There's this tournament's coming up now and they're going to do this and that. Well, just let someone not score runs. And then you've got Guptill there because he's going to score runs for Auckland. Like, I'd say the chances of Martin Guptill scoring runs for Auckland are far higher than Finn Allen scoring ODI runs against India. And when that happens, things change a bit. And you start to, Martin Guptill's making his case again. Ultimately, it comes back to what each of these players wants to do. Like, I think I saw Ishoti's only selected for the T20s. He's not selected for the ODIs. Like, those
They haven't been
situations.
paying attention to the spin bowling and the Plunket Shield, obviously.
Yeah, those situations, it's not about you getting in your feelings about that player. It's an opportunity for you to learn about that player. We are going to learn what Martin Guptill wants to do with his cricketing career. Because no one will begrudge Martin Guptill for stepping away. He's been a fantastic servant. But this process teaches us about Martin Guptill. Because if he just dominates for Auckland, then it's like, holy shit, Martin Guptill still wants to smoke. Ishoti's not going to be in the ODI squad, which I think aligns with Ford Trophy cricket. So Ishoti's going to have an opportunity. He's playing for Canterbury as well. He's going to have an opportunity to take wickets in the 50 over format. So I think it's for cricket fans, with the depth factor is a big thing here. Like, we've got depth, so we've got options, and when you've got options, selection calls have to be made. But these pockets of selection calls help us learn about each cricketer. Because some blokes command reselection. Others fall away, and they fall out of the mix.
I have one last question here that I'm thinking. Because, Ford Trophy, I just looked it up. Ford Trophy starts on the 22nd, Wellington Firebirds versus Canterbury, 22nd of November. And then just sort of like steady games for at least until Christmas, I think. Till a week before Christmas, and then there's a month off, which I assume some Super Smash stuff will start happening around then or something like that. So there is a game on the 12th of December, Auckland Aces versus Central Stags. Colin Maiden Park, it is a Monday. What are the chances you reckon we see the best mates Martin Guptill versus Ross Taylor both playing in that matchup?
Like, I'm pretty sure Taylor's not playing any more cricket.
He said he was going to keep going. I understand he didn't play any Plunket Shield. Why would you? But he might pop up for that. He probably more likely Super Smash, but so you're saying unlikely at least, though, because Martin Guptill is clearly going to be playing there because that's the same time as the Pakistan tour, which he's not going to be on as much.
Either way, the same thing is happening. Sixes are being hit, whether it's Martin Guptill and Laturu Taylor or just Martin Guptill. Sixes are being hit. So big up Aotearoa Sport. Big up yourself for listening to the Niche Case. We appreciate your support. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Raise your money. Raise your money. Raise your
Do that
mana.
too, though.
Māori ora. Che che.